The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Welcome to Health Matters. I'm your host, Dr. Lana Marconi. Tonight we're going to talk about happiness and emotional well-being. But first, I want to reveal the results of last week's poll question that asked, when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine, for example, acupuncture, moxibustion, tuina, and qigong, are you open to trying it at least once? According to the results, 89% of the people said yes, they were open to trying it, while 11% of the people said no, they weren't open to trying it. Thank you very much for your participation. Tonight, I have a new poll question for you, and it's based on this episode. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you in your life? For example, 1 to 4, you never feel happy. 5 to 7, you feel just okay. 8 to 10, you feel very happy. Let us know, rogerstv.com/healthmatters. And now, my first guest. She is a chiropractor turned success coach and founder of the Center for Heart Living. Please welcome Dr. Lise Janelle. Hi, Dr. Lise.
Hey, hello. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Lise, let's rock and roll. There's a lot of unhappy people in the world. According to Oprah, when she pooled the international community during her life class, apparently 77% of the people said that they were in emotional and spiritual pain. That's the global community. Here in Canada, we have millions of people who are depressed, including children, and millions more expected to follow. So I understand that you have a little something to help people that you want to give away to our viewers tonight. What do you have?
Yes, I have my book, Conversation with the Heart, because I have found over the years that as human beings, we live our life either through our mind, our emotions, or through our heart. And what all of us are looking for is that connection with the heart, because that's where we experience happiness. When people disconnect from there, they feel lives of quiet desperation, as Thoreau said.
Absolutely. Viewers at home, if you'd like a copy of Dr. Lise's book, please call us in studio, and our wonderful producer will take down your information, 905-595-LIVE. Also, if you have any questions for my panel this evening, please give us a call at 905-595-LIVE. All right, Dr. Lise. In your book, you talk about 8 mirrors. Explain to our viewers what these 8 mirrors are and how they kind of wake us up and how they're tied into happiness.
As human beings, we live our life through 8 basic areas of our life. One is the environment of our environment. For example, your house, your car, your clothes. And often people tend to try to get worth through those things on the outside. And what you'll be reflected to you will be exactly where you feel you're at. And sometimes people have low self-esteem and they need to buy expensive things that will reflect their worth. And what happens if they lose these things? So then they get into a crisis. And that crisis can actually be your saving grace, because through that crisis you have to re-examine, why do I do the things I do? Am I doing these things just because I want to appear to have some status? The other one can be our family, like the connection with your family. If you only feel worthy when you're connected to your family, what happens as a mother, for example, if your kids go away to school and now you're at home and you don't have a meaning in life? Like, that's a crisis. You're forced again to go inside yourself and find out, who am I really?
Sure, like the empty nest syndrome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like women, get depressed after that.
Yeah.
It can be society, our friends. What happens if all of a sudden, to follow your heart, you need to leave your nest of friends and go somewhere where you're not known? You can have deep depression. A young man came to see me. He's 19 years old, and he left his country to come to Canada to study, and he wanted to commit suicide.
Wow.
The another environment can be your career. If you define yourself by your career and you get fired, who are you? If you define yourself by your money and you lose everything in the stock market, who are you?
Yeah, and Deepak Chopra often, asks that profound question, who am I? And oftentimes people will say, well, I'm a daughter, or I'm a wife, or, I work at the bank, or I do all these external things, but that's all ego. Really, who are you at the core of it? Right?
I find a wise question you can ask someone is, if you had 24 hours left to live, what would you do? And this is where you would see what matters most to people. And most of the time, I've been asking this question to hundreds and hundreds of people. And when I ask this question, most people, if they had 24 hours left to live, they would want to spend some of this alone and reflect and have gratitude and do a transition. But the other part is they would want to be with loved ones and they would want to be grateful and have gratitude. Gratitude is the key. This is, when we have gratitude, we know we're in our heart.
Sure. What would you do?
What I would do is I would go in meditation. I would be grateful. I would look back at my life. I would make sure that I feel grateful for everything that's ever happened to me. And I would spend the rest of my time in nature and with my family and saying thank you.
Nice.
Have a party, maybe do all kinds of crazy things and just celebrate.
I would dance.
You would dance?
Yeah, I would dance. I love to dance. And, you know, research shows dancing actually helps to improve your mood, boost your mood. And I would laugh, because laughter also improves your mood. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about environment, family. What other mirrors do we have
So I
to
talked
wake us up?
about...
So crisis, you're getting at like crises wake us up.
That's the blessing.
That's the blessing.
And when you have these environments, look, because, for example, one is health and physical beauty. As a woman, we are often our physical beauty. What happens as you age? If you're a man and you define yourself by your physical strength or because you're an athlete, what happens if that goes away? So look at how you're using the mirrors of your life, and are you defining, there's nothing wrong with wanting all of these things, but don't define yourself from those things. These are the things that you can have in your life. I think it's one of the Buddhist principle of non-attachment. It's not really about not having those things. It's about not judging yourself whether you have these things or not.
Yeah. So I hear you saying the external things, don't really attach to the external things because to make you happy. And research actually shows, for example, with money, if you were to get a windfall, like of $1 million, let's say, and if you were unhappy before you received that money, your mood would boost to becoming happy, but then after a while you would go back to the same mood that you were prior to receiving the windfall. And actually research shows that with marriage as well. So depending on what your mood was before you got married, it would boost up and then go back down to where it was. So it shows that external objects or people, their effect of happiness on us is temporary.
I think what happens is often people think, if I can get this in my life, then I'm going to be happy, and they get it. And then actually there's often depression, from elation to depression, because you end up feeling like, I don't feel any different. So if that thing that was going to make me happy is not making me happy, there's really no hope for me.
Yeah. Okay, go on. What else do we have?
Spiritual, the environment of spirituality. For me, the highest level of spirituality is having unconditional love for self and others. That would be having transcended everything in here. And I think it's an ideal goal to go towards. But at the same time, we know whether or not we have attained this when we can sit in silence and be at peace and not have to perform anything and just be able to listen to the heart. You know that you have been able to listen to the heart and you are acting on your heart when you can just sit at peace and not feel like you have to move or do something or get great anxiety.
Yeah, experience that stillness and operate in the world from that place of stillness. Right? And the next mirror?
I think we've done them all.
Have we? Okay.
Yes.
So we have, what about career? I have career and finance.
I touched those
We did?
two. Yeah.
Okay. I want to mention one thing about Deepak Chopra and career. In his book, The 7 Laws of Success. Have you read that little book of his, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success? It came out a long time ago.
Yes.
And he says that one of the reasons people don't feel happy is because they're not connected to their dharma. And for him, 3 components of their dharma are connecting to your spirituality, like you just mentioned, connecting to your inner god and your inner goddess, connecting to your talent, because there's something that you can do that nobody else can do better, and connecting with service, so serving humanity. And when you have all 3 lined up, the universe, according to him, is supposed to support you.
Well, that's how I describe this, is that within ourselves there is a voice, and that voice has been guiding us all our life. And when we look back at our life, and the reason why we're unhappy is that as human beings, often we have the search for pleasure without challenges. And we're trying to get one side of the duality, which is impossible to get. But if we're wise, what we're going to be able to look back is, most of us, I would say, most of us has 2 or 3 big dramas that happen to us, something that's really painful, that's been driving our life, getting us to react. And if we're wise, we can go back and find how this challenge in my life actually was serving me. And you will see that a lot of the talents, a lot of the interests that you have stem from this challenge. And you really heal yourself when you're able to take those challenging moments, have gratitude for them, and see how you can serve the world as a result of having had these challenges in your life.
So that's a great point, and all that information is in your book.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body, and the pain body is the part of the person that just feasts on misery and more pain, and the person isn't really aware of what's going on with that. And so, for example, a person who had a lover cheat on them, I mean, some of these people stay caught up in that pain for years, and it immobilizes them to move forward in life because they can't see that that tragedy was a wake-up call, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. We can take anything that happens to us. You see it all the time. Some people have accidents and they become quadriplegic, and they have amazing, inspiring lives. And somebody has a tiny thing happens to them, and they use it to stop and not live anymore. So it's really a choice we all make. And I'm not poo-pooing that there are very challenging situations out there. I've had my share. I'm sure you have had your share. And if we are wise, we're going to realize, and I think as human beings, as a race, we need to wake up. Yeah. We really need to wake up. That's why I like using the yin and the yang. Usually it's black and white. But for me, it represents that everybody on planet Earth, all of us, are going to have challenges. Mm-hmm. And we better stop trying to look only for support. We need to be able to embrace both sides. That's the game. If you start to think, how is this support getting me what my dreams and aspirations are? And how does this challenge help me get that as well?
Yeah, I was watching Ellen DeGeneres once. She had rock star Melissa Etheridge on. And Melissa Etheridge, it was after she had cancer. So Melissa was saying, when cancer had knocked on my door, it was a wake-up call because my life was out of balance. So she said that I'm very grateful for the cancer because it helped me to bring my life back into alignment.
I have quite a few cancer patients that have come to see me, and using the cancer can be what transformed lives. And what's important when you're facing a huge challenge, you start asking yourself wise question, like, why am I doing this? Is this really what I would love to be doing? And people turn it around and have the greatest blessing out of the greatest challenge. All of us, if we choose to, we can actually transform challenges into blessings.
How do you get people to be grateful for a trauma when they're so stuck and caught in recycling their trauma over and over?
Well, people have to decide if they want to live an inspiring life. Your intention will create your reality. Yeah. Your intention will create your reality. So if your intention is to live an amazing life, and I think that would be a wise intention to have, you have no choice but to use the challenges that happen to everybody and find out how they help you.
We're going to just hold that thought. We're just going to take a quick break. More with Dr. Lise Janelle and looking at happiness tonight on Health Matters. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Health Matters. We are exploring happiness tonight, and I'm sitting here with Dr. Lise Janelle. Dr. Lise, okay, in your book, you say many wonderful things. I love your book, by the way, and for viewers at home, we are giving away Dr. Lise's book this evening. If you'd like a copy, please dial 905-595-LIVE. All right, you say that the reason people are in pain has to do with how well or not well, really, they are connected to their true self. What is the true self?
When you ask someone to point at themselves, they usually go, this is me. Rarely somebody's going to go, this is me. People go right there. And when we go and we are still, there is that voice within ourselves, in our heart. And that's our true self. In moments of gratitude, we have better access to it. But that our true self is guiding us all the time. And we know the difference between infatuation, which is of the senses, and our true self, which wants something that's going to be fulfilling. So when we are in our heart, it feels quiet. When we're infatuated with something, when we're emotional about something, it's all fast energy, and it's often above or below the heart point. When we're in the heart, you feel it as a quiet energy, a quiet connection. And when you are there, you feel safe, you feel abundant, you feel happy, and you have wisdom.
Yeah. What does it mean to live authentically?
Living authentically is the ability to align our time with what matters most to us, and to align our actions with what our heart wants.
Nice. I watch a lot of Oprah, especially her life class, and she had Dr. Martha Beck on the show once, and she's a Harvard graduate, and she's a contributor to the O magazine, and she was telling Oprah, she said, I went for surgery, many years ago, and I had an out-of-body experience while I was underneath the knife, and at that point I had saw the light, and the light. I felt this tremendous joy in my heart like I've never felt before. The light was of no color on earth. I felt so much peace, so much love, like just incredible inside. And she says to Oprah, she says, and the light spoke to me. And Oprah's like, okay, Martha, what did the light say? And Martha said, this light said, this goodness that you feel is normal. This is how you should be feeling all the time while you're on earth. And if you're not feeling that, you are out of alignment with your true self. So when Martha came back into her body and the surgery was over, she said to herself, I want to feel this goodness all the time. And her avenue to doing that was self-honesty. So she decided every day she was going to be honest with herself and not tell a lie. So sometimes, when people say, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm doing fine. But meanwhile, you're miserable inside. She goes, I would start saying, my day sucks. No, I'm not feeling well. She was just brutally honest with people. She lost a lot of friends because those relationships were fake. But then after a while, she had a lot of real relationships, and she experiences that good feeling.
One of the reasons I actually started to do this work is because I took a seminar with Dr. Lana Marconi and called it Breakthrough to Higher Power. And I got to do the method where you learn to have gratitude for everything in your life. And the blessing that I had was I had been so angry at my father back then. I had been so angry, and I had compressed all this anger inside of me. And when I did the work, my heart opened up so wide that I got to experience this. I didn't have to die. I was lucky. I didn't have to die to experience that state of bliss that comes when you understand that everything that has ever happened to you, everything that's happening, everything that will ever happen to you is part of the perfection to help you bring the best out of yourself so you can learn how to love, so you can love yourself and others. And because that experience was so powerful, and when I look at the perfection of my life, I needed my father to be the way he was, which was a wounded man, to make me angry, to give me drive. Without my father having been the way he was, I would have never lived the amazing life that I live. And if each one of us starts to do that, we could transform the world. Because once we start having gratitude, we start respecting ourselves, but we also respect others. I cannot go and tell someone to stop doing what they're doing, to start hurting other people. But if we're able to, each one of us start to love more and have acts of gratitude and kindness towards each other, this is how we could really shift everything.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I want to talk more about the support and challenge, because oftentimes our perception is warped. And I mean, our Stats Canada shows how many people are depressed, right? And so for me, that's, saying people are really focused on the misery, whereas they're focused on the challenge, and they're not seeing the support. So I want to play a perceptual game with you, and I learned this game when I was at York doing my undergraduate in psychology, and I had to take a course on perception. So if we can throw up a photo, it's called the vase. If we could put up a vase photo that I can play a game here with Dr. Lees, and I'm going to ask you, once this photo comes up, what you actually see in this vase, because things aren't always what they appear to be. Okay, here's the vase. Now, do you see a vase or do you see something else?
I can see both a vase and two people looking at each other.
See, you're good at this. You're good at this. You've been trained to see both challenge and support. That's not fair. All right, let's try and trick Dr. Lise here, and I'm going to throw up another photo of the top hat. Let's throw up the top hat, and we'll ask Dr. Lise a question. Viewers at home, play along with me. Is the top hat higher than it is wide at the brim, Dr. Lise? What do you think?
I don't understand.
The top hat, is it higher than it is wide?
If it's a trick question, it's probably not.
You are correct. It's not. But what happens is our senses deceive us. We don't take in all the data through our 5 senses. Okay, let's try the last one. It's of the prongs, and we'll see what Dr. Lise says about the prongs. How many prongs do you see?
Well, depending on how you look at it, you either see 3 or you see 2.
2 is the correct answer. Thank you for playing with me. So I just want to show people life is not what it appears to be. Oftentimes when we have tunnel vision, we're just looking at one thing, and really what your book is showing people is to open up the blinders to see really all of what's in front of you, because really what's in front of us gets filtered through our mental schema, and we really need to drop that and look at everything. Would you agree?
I really think if we could change the whole world, if we all got in our mind that from the beginning of our life to the end of our life, we're going to have support and challenge, and the game is to use both to our advantage. And once we start looking at life that way, we're free. Life becomes fun. Like I often give my clients the exercise to have a gratitude journal. And one of my clients, she's got MS. And at first, she says she was kind of negative and she didn't know what to write in her book. She was writing all the same thing all the time. But then her assignment was to find 3 to 5 things every day. And she says, after a while, because I knew I had to write in my darn book, I had to look for gratitude. So the things I started to look for was things to be grateful for. Her life was the same life, except now she started to look for things to be grateful for.
Nice.
And it changed her whole life.
Okay, speaking of your book, because I love it so much, I'm going to ask you to read a passage, and I wrote in your book, I'm sorry.
I love that. People come and then
we'll talk about this. Okay, so see where I wrote start? So if you can start there and then stop there, and just give us a nice reading for our viewers. That would be lovely this evening.
My pleasure. I once went to a seminar where we were asked to sit with a person we did not know and share with that person what we would do if we did not have any fears. People were quite emotional, sharing their deep desires, and the people that were listening were very present and quiet. When the seminar leader asked the listener if they wanted the other person's desire to come true, we all wholeheartedly said yes. We felt that we would love to support them in any way possible. The seminar leader then asked, "Do you think that the universe would not want it for you too?" This felt right at a deep level. It does not make sense to me that our Creator would want us to be miserable. Everything that happens, both pleasant and unpleasant, is to help us achieve our deepest heart desires. Once you know that all the events that you attract are there to help you, you can start taking advantage of everything that comes your way. You won't need blind faith. Very soon you will have proven to yourself that this universe is a loving one, even if sometimes it feels really bad to your senses. As you do, your life will take on a feeling of adventure.
Nice. I love adventure.
Life is one big one.
So when I read this passage, what came to me was the idea of trust. And how many people out there just don't trust the universe to support them?
Well, from my experience, a lot of people have good reasons why they have stopped trusting. But that's why if we love who we are, we're going to take the time to heal those moments so that we can learn to trust again. When I have someone who's a parent and they stop trusting, and I ask them, would you want your child to having stopped trusting in life? And they say, oh my goodness, no. But I said, why are you doing it? And they, oh, I never thought about it that way. Because if we have a choice in our life, we either live from our heart or from fears. That's really the only way we can live our life. From our heart, and you experience heaven on earth, or from our fears, and you experience hell on earth.
Yeah, fear and love can't share the same space. It's one or the other.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, I have another question for you from your book. You say, the thing that we all want to know deep down is that we are worthy of love. Are you saying that many people have the seated belief that they are not worthy of love?
I would say that most of us have the illusion that we are unworthy of love, and that's the biggest work that we can do. Why? Because it's like the divine cosmic joke on us. We are born into this world needing love to come from the outside.
Sure. As you're speaking, I'd like to post a photo of the tree, if we have a tree with the seeds, and keep speaking about the seeds of belief.
So, we are born, love has to come from the outside. And if love doesn't come when we want it, how we want it, we start thinking something is wrong with me. So all of us, we go through transition. Mom sometimes is tired. She doesn't respond when we want her or need her. And mom, right now, don't panic. It's part of the perfection of a child's life. Having siblings that you've battled with, and then you go to school where little kids are mean to you. And when we look at that, we can develop the illusions that we are unworthy of love. But if you are wise, what's going to happen? You're going to wake up one day, you're going to realize this is not true. Just like your child is worthy of love, whether or not they're being bullied, you were worthy of love, whether you were being bullied.
Sure.
And what you're going to start to realize is that it's your responsibility to be happy. Your happiness is your responsibility.
And to change those seeds of belief. Because if you look at the photo, unhealthy beliefs show up as a scanty-looking tree.
Yes, that's such a happy tree.
And healthy beliefs show up as a fruitful tree. So I think that's a great analogy. Using the tree and seeds is really our seeds of belief. And really it's about shifting our beliefs, is it not?
Our beliefs will create our perception, which will create our reality.
Yeah. Vincent van Gogh, the Dutch painter in the 1800s, he committed suicide. I know, like many psychologists have this painting, The Starry Night. There it is, The Starry Night. Every psychologist pretty much has this painting in their office because when he was in France, he went to a sanatorium because he had bipolar disorder. And this was his view from the room before he actually committed suicide. So treatments have changed since his time. Dr. Lees, thank you so much
thank you for
your
having
time.
me.
Thank you. We'll be back more on health matters and happiness. Thank you. Welcome back to Health Matters. If you're just joining us, we're discussing happiness and emotional well-being. I have a poll question for you to answer. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you in your life? Let us know, rogerstv.com/healthmatters. My next guest practices complementary and integrative medicine. He is an expert in nutritional biochemistry. 3 of his books, including The Joy of Health, have been Canadian bestsellers. He is past president of the Canadian Holistic Medical Association, and he is a writer for Vitality magazine. Please help me to warmly welcome Dr. Zoltan Rona.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. Now, I understand that one of the ways that you help people with their emotional stability is through micronutrients, such as vitamin D, and you have a little something you'd like to generously give to our viewers this evening. What is that?
Well, it's a copy of my book, Vitamin D, the Sunshine Vitamin. And it's all about everything that you want to know about vitamin D.
Okay, well, let's talk about vitamin D.
The main thing that people don't realize is that a large percentage of the population is deficient in this vitamin. And that's partially because we live in Canada where we don't get enough sunshine. Sunshine is what manufactures vitamin D through our skin. And so most people who aren't exposed to sunshine, and there seems to be a phobia about going out in the sun these days. You have a lot of doctors and dermatologists saying, don't go out in the sun and wear sunblock. And if you wear a lot of sunblock, your body doesn't manufacture vitamin D. And if you avoid the sunshine, the only place you can get it from would be from some, few food sources.
Okay. What is the link between vitamin D and happiness, or the lack of vitamin D and in our moods?
Well, there are receptors in the body everywhere for vitamin D, and there are receptors in the brain for vitamin D. And if you have low levels, those receptors aren't satisfied. And as a result of that, you may feel emotionally low.
Now, when I read your book, and I love your book, by the way,
Thank you.
viewers at home, if you'd like a copy of his book, please call 905-595-LIVE. I'm taking 3,000 international units of vitamin D, up from the 1,100 prescribed. In your book, you recommend 10,000.
Well, if you don't have sunshine exposure, you need at least that much to maintain the proper balance. Studies have shown that between 5 and 10,000 units of vitamin D a day are totally harmless. There aren't any toxicity issues involved. Now, there is a kind of a phobia about taking vitamin D as well, and I think a lot of that is based on old information, and the new studies suggest that actually that's quite safe.
So it's not toxic at that level?
Well,
for
if
a
you
body.
stand out in the sunshine for an hour in the middle of the summer at high noon, your body will make at least 10,000 units of vitamin D.
Sure. I mean, and even in your book, you were talking about, you had referenced Dr. Norm Shealy, who had visited an endocrinologist,
Yes.
And he was helping people with diabetes, and he was giving them up to 50,000
Yes.
units of vitamin
And
D.
Dr. Shealy himself is taking 50,000 units every day. The thing you have to be careful about there is not to take a calcium supplement, because the vitamin D will push more of the calcium into your arteries. So you have to be careful to balance the other nutrients as well.
Interesting. Okay, so when I read your book, you also talked about certain foods that have vitamin D in it, and I did a little home experiment because I'm a very visual person. So I wanted to share this with viewers. So can you help me with
Yeah,
this?
of course.
So basically, I'm going to give this is vitamin D. So I'm going to give you in this little bowl over there. You can just put that over there. Now, in this tray, we have cod liver oil, and that's at 1,360 IUs. That's just 1 teaspoon.
Right.
1 teaspoon. And you're recommending 10,000 at least a day.
Right.
Right?
You wouldn't want to do that because you'd be getting vitamin A along with the vitamin D. So if you want to take that much vitamin D, you'd have to probably just take it by itself, not with the vitamin A. And vitamin A, if you take too much of that, that offsets the vitamin D. So the two have to be balanced correctly in order to prevent, something bad from happening.
Sure. And then here's my egg. I was going to put a little happy face on the egg, but I didn't have time. So the egg has only 20
I know.
units. It's low.
That's right.
Very low. And it's just the egg yolk that you're supposed to eat. Okay. So this liquid here is supposed to represent salmon, and salmon, we're at 3.5 ounces is 360 IUs.
Right.
Again, low.
Yeah, all of those kind of levels, if you relied only on that, you might be able to prevent rickets or osteomalacia in adults, which is a dissolving of the bones. But if you wanted to optimize your health, I think you'd have to go with much higher levels, because in order to prevent cancer, inflammation, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and many other diseases, apparently there's about 200 different diseases you can prevent by being adequately nourished in vitamin D. So if you want to do that, food is not going to be enough. You're going to have to expose yourself to a lot more sunshine or take a supplement like this, for example.
So in that bottle, which is a bottle I use, 1 drop is 1,000 IUs.
Right.
So can you show viewers what 10 drops looks like?
Sure.
And
In
we'll
fact,
compare
if you
that
want,
one
I'll even take it.
to, oh, sure.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it.
Perfect.
Now, I have patients taking a lot more than that, which is not very much.
It's not
if
much.
You, if you look at
and
it,
then compared to, yeah.
it's gone. So,
And it's pretty tasteless.
it has no taste.
Yeah.
That one has no flavor. There are many brands out there. This is just one of them. In the health food store, you can probably find, TriStar Biotics Research, Soroil or Genestra has it. Many companies have it.
You say in your book that every person on an antidepressant should have a blood test for vitamin D. Why?
Because the vast majority of people that are depressed are low in vitamin D. Seasonal affective disorder and bipolar disorder and many other diseases associated or called depression really are vitamin D deficiency diseases.
And you recommend people take a test every 3 months? Why every 3 months?
Because if they're taking a supplement, a high-dose supplement, it's important to make sure that they're not overdosing or that they're getting adequate amounts. Like I've seen people take 10,000 units a day and their blood levels remain very low. So sometimes we have to push it up to 50,000 or even higher.
Interesting. Okay. You wrote an article called Treating Depression Naturally. So how else can people treat their depression other than vitamin D?
The most important thing that people have to do is exercise. I think that in itself cures a large number of people that are depressed. And you have to look at things like amino acids, trace minerals, deficiencies, for example, in zinc, chromium, calcium, magnesium. Magnesium is very important. And also there are people that have various toxins, things like lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, aluminum, too much copper, not enough zinc. All of those can cause a depressed case.
How do the natural supplements treating depression hold up with pharmaceuticals?
You
What's
mean
the advantage?
The interaction?
No, what's the advantage of taking the natural over the pharmaceuticals?
Well, pharmaceuticals, if you look at the past 27 years, there have been 3 million deaths associated with pharmaceutical prescribed in the correct way. And in the past 27 years, there have been 0 deaths associated with natural remedies. So natural remedies are far safer. I mean, there's a huge difference. Even if you take aspirin, for example, the recent studies show that if you take aspirin on a daily basis, you have 3 times the risk of macular degeneration than if you didn't take it. So
Wow.
Tylenol is the #1 cause of liver failure in North America. So it's the #1 reason why people get liver transplants. So even over-the-counter things, which are supposedly safe, are, far more dangerous than any supplement that's out on the market today.
Okay, let's move into the area of the brain.
Okay.
Okay, so science, according to science, happiness is caused by the brain chemistry, neurotransmitters, serotonin, and dopamine. What role do those neurotransmitters play in happiness?
I think they play an exaggeratedly important role.
Okay.
I don't believe that that's the whole answer for everything. I think that neurotransmitters and neurotransmitter receptor sites and so on are important, but it's a small part of the total story. You have to look at things, for example, like endorphins. You have to look at, once again, toxins like mercury toxicity. Can be associated with all kinds of neurological conditions. And you have to look at also other areas. You talked before about spirituality and about things to do with the mind that have nothing whatsoever to do with brain chemicals. And in fact, this theory about serotonin and dopamine and so on, it's a theory, and it's still, in my opinion, unproven as a real cause of depression or of happiness.
Okay. I want to move into Dr. Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, one of my mentors. Okay. He believes that negative thinking is actually ingrained in the human psyche. He says, because our brain evolved during a time of ice, flood, and famine, we have a catastrophic brain. The way the brain works is that it's looking for what's wrong. The problem is that worked 2.5 million years ago. Right. It's not really working great today in the modern world. Experiments show that human beings remember failures more clearly than successes. We dwell on things that go badly, not went well. When life is running smoothly, we're on autopilot, our emotions lie dormant. Neuroscience research shows that unpleasant images trigger responses from more primitive parts of the brain, while happiness is registered by the prefrontal cortex, which evolved later in mankind's history. Even though modern humans are stuck with this ancient brain, he believes that we can train ourselves to be happier. So for you, what is your view on the brain, perception, and happiness?
Well, I think it's a multifactorial thing. I think many different things go into making the brain more positive or more negative. I think positive thinking and negative thinking, they're habits that people develop, and I think those habits can be broken. So there's many ways of doing that. One of them is through meditation, another is through exercise, aerobic exercise, and then another way is to optimize your nutritional status. So I think all 3 of those things can be put together and really reverse any kind of ingrained genetic susceptibilities we may have.
Sure, okay, you touched upon food for a minute. There's a psychologist, Cynthia Powers, in the Illinois Institute for Addiction Recovery. She found that people's eating patterns change based on their emotions. She had 500 people maintain a food log as well as noting their mood. This is what their study discovered. When you're angry, you're going to eat meat. When you're stressed, you're going to eat salty foods. When you're in need of comfort, you're going to eat ice cream. When you're sad, sugary foods and caffeine. When you're sexually frustrated, you're going to eat pretzels, bread, and crackers. And when you're lonely, you're going to eat pasta and rice. So, what are the best foods we should eat to boost our moods?
By the way, I don't do any of that stuff. It doesn't resonate with me.
No ice cream for you?
Very rarely. Very rarely.
No.
Pretzels, almost never.
I'm not a sweet person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I think that may be
yeah.
true for some people, and I think maybe there are populations that fit that kind of picture, but I don't think it's universally true.
So what types of food should people be eating to keep their mood stable?
Well, I think certainly getting adequate amounts of protein are extremely important. Avoidance of carbohydrates. Now, recently there's been a lot of information about the use of or avoidance of gluten and dairy products as a way of controlling moods. You have to have adequate amounts of certain amino acids, and those come from protein. So, for example, tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine, GABA, and many other amino acids have a lot to do with mood. So, if you don't get adequate amounts of protein, then those amino acids are not going to be at high enough levels to produce good moods.
And the foods you would stay away from are the ones I mentioned?
Yeah, basically those I would stay away from, those quick-acting carbohydrates, the high salty foods. They stress the adrenals and the thyroid, so.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. More on Health Matters and on happiness. Stick around. Welcome back to Health Matters. If you're just joining us, we're looking at happiness and emotional well-being. I'm joined by Dr. Zoltan Rona. Thank you for being here. I want to move into genetic determinism and bring up Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I'm just going to give a quick story. Back in the 70s, he was teaching medical students genetic determinism. At the same time, he was doing stem cell research. So he had a petri dish with the cell in it, and it would divide. So by 2 weeks, he had like thousands of these identical cells. So he did an experiment. He took one and put it in another petri dish, and it developed bones. He took another one, put it in another petri dish, and it developed fat. He took one, put it in a new environment, and it developed muscles. So now he was confronted with the fact that, okay, all these cells are apparently identical, but they all have different fates. So who's controlling who here? He came to conclude that it's the environment that controls our genes. He was ostracized at the time, it was back in the 70s. Now we have epigenetic control, which is that we do control our genes. So what do you think about gene control? Because it really implies victimization, you know, it's in my genes, that's why I'm depressed. You know, and he says only 2% of illness is only genetically related, and the rest is lifestyle.
Absolutely. I believe that lifestyle and nutrition have everything to do with what the outcomes are going to be. So, for example, if you have a high risk for heart disease based on your genetics, like your father and your brother, if they all died at age 45 of heart attacks, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same fate. If you exercise, if you look after your diet, if you take certain nutrients, that are important for heart health, then I think you can, live far longer than age 45. So I just don't believe that, because I see that day in and day out in my practice, that people are able to overcome genetic weaknesses just by changing their lifestyle.
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of his famous quotes is that the cells are the blueprint and we are the contractors.
Yeah, that's probably a very good statement.
So we're the creators of our lives. All right, let's move into happiness and sex, doctor.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So sex is healthy. Studies show that sex is healthy, but when we're depressed, we have low libidos, right? That's what some studies show. So you wrote an article called How to Get a Fab Sex Life Naturally, and you wrote Sexy Supplements. Explain.
Well, there's all kinds of natural remedies that one can take, and there are dietary changes that one can make in order to boost libido and sex drive. So aside from the sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen, progesterone, there are also amino acids. For example, there's one called arginine, which if you took like between 5,000 and 6,000 milligrams of arginine before bedtime, that would improve circulation throughout the whole body, but also in the pelvic or genital areas. So a lot of men have used that as a way of boosting their libido.
How would normal people, not normal people, but average people out in the community know to do that, unless they went to see someone like you? Because the average MD, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't disseminate that type of information.
I wrote a book called Boosting Libido Naturally,
okay,
a live books, and I don't have it here, but it's available in any health food store. And in there's at least 10 different supplements that people can take to improve circulation, to enhance blood flow, to reverse erectile dysfunction and basically have a fabulous sex life.
Okay, nice. What do you do to be happy?
Well, the thing that really gets me going is sports. I play a lot of tennis, and it's amazing how much better I feel after I play a couple of hours of tennis. If I don't get the exercise, that's what makes all the difference in the world for me. I also take a large number of supplements, mostly B vitamins, vitamin C. I take a lot of antioxidants. I take natural anti-inflammatories. I take vitamin D, for example. So all of that, I think, makes a big difference for me.
Sure. How would you help women going through menopause? Because oftentimes they report feeling irritable, for example.
Well, the big problem in menopause, believe it or not, is stress. That's the number one thing. If you didn't have stress, you'd probably sail right through menopause. But I find that a lot of women, they benefit from what's called bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. These are very low doses of bioidentical hormones that are normally the same as what are found in the body. And I get women to use a cream that they use twice a day, and it's balanced to what their hormonal needs are. You also have to look at things like thyroid and adrenal function, because those are oftentimes out of balance as well. So I usually try to tailor make these hormone prescriptions to the woman's needs based on lab work.
Sure. What's the relationship between, let's say, negative emotions such as anger and disease, and positive emotions and good health?
Oh, there's no question. There's a strong correlation between those emotions and disease. So I totally agree with you and with Lise, who was talking earlier about this. All of these things can make a huge impact.
One of the books that I've read before is called the Sedona Method. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's by the founder is Lester Levinson, and back in the 40s, his doctor pretty much sent him home and said, "You're going to die." Okay. Yeah. He was a very wealthy man in New York, and he said to himself, "You know, how could I do this to myself? Here I am, a very successful, I think he was a physicist, very successful in the world, but really couldn't take care of his health. And now, you know, he was about to die, and he had a heart problem. So what he did was he did deep introspection, and he looked at his life, and he realized the link between when he was depressed, he was sick. And when he was happy, he was healthy. So for him, it was a lot of baggage people were carrying, their past baggage. And so he came up with like 3 tips that people could do to release the past. You would say, could you let it go? Yes. Are you willing to let it go? Yes. And when are you willing to let it go? And the answer is now. So what would you say to people who, I guess, who are caught up in the tragedy or trauma of their past, and you want them to move forward into good health?
Well, I tell them to take one step at a time. Like, I think the first thing, if they don't exercise, get them into some kind of exercise program. Get them to look at their nutritional biochemistry, because that's very simple. It doesn't require like a huge time investment or anything else. You just have to basically find out what's high and what's low, and to check your hormones out. So get a physical assessment. I think that's the place to start.
Sure. Have you ever heard of Wayne Dyer?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Everyone has.
Yeah. He does a lot on PBS. So his show is called, one of the recent ones was Wishes Fulfilled. So he talks about his friend Portia Nelson on habits. Okay, so this person, Portia, went to a seminar where she was instructed to write down 5 chapters of her life on small cards. So I'm going to read this to you, okay? Okay. So chapter 1, I walk down the street, there is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in, I'm lost, I'm helpless. It's not my fault. It takes me forever to get outside. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it and I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. And it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it. And I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open and I know it's there. It is my fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. I walk down another street. So for me, when I hear this, it reminds me of how people keep doing the same things over and over again in terms of, let's say, depression, and they keep spinning the same record of depression. And it's not my fault, so we play the blame game. What would you say to people to open their eyes to the joy in life, to walk down a new street?
Well, you know, I get people to read books. I get people to look at positive thinking type of books. One of the ones that I've read recently is Conversations with God. I find that very enlightening because people that are in a funk, I mean, I think the story is that the author himself was in a major funk and his life wasn't going well. And the more he tried to fix it, the worse it got, that kind of thing. So I think the book gives people inspiration to make the changes that they need to make and stop falling into the holes.
Neil Donald Walsh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great book.
It came out a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like part 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
And there's a new one called Communion with God, which is another excellent book.
Yeah.
I think if people start at that kind of, you know, some kind of self-help book,
Sure.
you know, one good thing leads to another. Usually, if people are searching, just to get them motivated to do the searching, that's, I think, the most important thing.
So you wrote The Joy of Health.
Yeah.
Okay. So what opened you up to joy?
Well, that's a very good question. I was interested in improving my performance in sports, in tennis, and so I got to reading about nutrition and about supplementing with vitamins and minerals, and I started to do some of those things myself, and I felt quite different, you know, while taking those supplements, and it improved my game, and so I got more and more interested in the field, and I decided to, when I got into medical school, to look more into it. And unfortunately, in medical school, there was very little, if anything, on natural healing, so I had to learn it all separately on my own.
Do you find that your attitude towards joy has evolved throughout the years then?
My attitude, yes. I think I wanted to share this kind of information with more and more people, and you know, I feel that it's a very positive type of medicine. So the more I research this area, you know, the better I feel in general. So obviously, my point of view has changed a lot over the years.
So are you? Do you tell yourself affirmations during the day? Do you think positively? Do you think that's part of, you know,
I think
joyful
it is.
living?
Yes, it is, because I think you're looking at solutions. You're looking at ways of improving yourself, and I think by doing that, you are making an affirmation.
Sure.
Just by the very fact of doing that.
What do you think we should do, like as a nation, Canada, in terms of improving our happiness index? Because we ranked really low on the happiness index. We were like 65.
Well, there's quite a few things that can be done. I think one of the most important ones is to increase people's activity levels, you know. I think we see far too many people not being very active, spending too much time in front of the TV or in front of video games, and really not getting into physical fitness. I think that's part of the answer. I think it's a simple thing to do, and it would make such a huge difference, I think, in people's lives.
Sure, sure. Just going back to Dr. Martin Seligman, he says he did a study on how to create well-being with people, and every night he had people write down 3 things that went well during the day and why it went well. 6 months later, in a randomized placebo-controlled test, people who did this were happier and had a higher level of life satisfaction and lower depression. And in other words, be conscious of the things that go well in your life.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree totally. Focus on, you know, positive things. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the mindset. Mindset, physical body, take care of, right? Any other tips you have for our viewers?
Well, I think one of the most important things to do is to get out of the frame of mind that you need a pill or a drug to solve, you know, depression or your
Thank you.
moods.
Thank you so much. Come
You're
back
very welcome.
anytime. I'll leave you with the words of Dr. Seuss, who said, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happens." I'm Dr. Lana, signing off from Health Matters. Have a very happy evening.